Yo, what's up people? Today I'm super excited because I've been planning to do this video for a really long time and it's finally going to happen. Basically, I'm gonna compare the Chris Reeve Omnumzan and Cozy Sebenza large and small to each other, and hopefully some of you might find this helpful because I do very well remember when I was trying to buy my first Chris Reeve. I was super confused. Should I buy a large one, a small one, in Cozy Sebenza, whatever. It was super confusing to me. So basically, yeah, we're going to compare those knives against each other. Quick disclaimer, the Chris Reeve Mnandi and the Impinder are not going to be in this video. And I also do not have all the blade shapes and all the variations, obviously. But I'm going to still try to do my best and give you my take on all of those. And yeah, so let's just dive into it. Hopefully my voice doesn't sound too cracky because I've been trying to do this video once already and it took me like 40 minutes, so bear with me, okay? So, before we're gonna compare the large models against each other, we are gonna answer one question really quickly. Should you choose a large or a small one? Well, that's pretty simple. You only have the choice to have a large or a small version with the Inkosi here or with the Sebenza. Now, the small Inkosi, in my opinion, the small Inkosi is one of those stout, overbuilt, a little bit of the chunkier folding knives. I don't think that's too practical, to be honest. Unless you like those knives, you know, that play in the sort of the same roam like the Spyderco Techno or something like that. I wouldn't choose a small Inkosi, never. So if you choose a small Chris Reeve knife, it has to be the Sebenza. Now, does it make sense to buy a small Sebenza or a large one? Well, what knives do you usually carry? Are you usually a small knife guy or do you usually carry larger knives? Okay, I do like larger knives myself, so I would always gravitate more towards one of the large models and not towards the small Sebenza. Now, here's a quick size comparison for you. Here's a Spyderco Para 3. As you can see, the blade is quite a bit narrower. And another size comparison is the Spyderco Chaparral. A really great small knife, by the way. The Spyderco Chaparral here. And let's bring in the SOG Terminus XR in here. Now, in comparison to the large Sebenza, the small one is quite a bit smaller. And we have like a 3-inch blade, I think. Yeah, 3 inches, 7.6 centimeters on the small one, which the larger one is 9 centimeters, so 3.6 inches in the blade length. I like the small one. It fits my hands. I have relatively small hands. If you have large hands, you probably will not like this too much. 3 millimeters thick on the spine and 0.37 millimeters behind the edge. That's 14,000. So it is slicey. It's not my most favorite small knives, I gotta say. I bought the small one because I wanted to have a Chris Reeve for the summer when I didn't want to have that much weight on me. I do gravitate towards the large one still, so I think for most people the large one is gonna be better unless you always carry small knives in the first place. But other than that, I would always go for a larger one. Now, next question, Sebenza 21 or 31. That's pretty simple. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, okay? Basically, the difference is, now on the Sebenza 21, you have the carbonized titanium frame lock, so no insert. On the Inkosi Umnumzan and Sebenza 31, you have the ceramic ball insert. And basically what that means is, on the old versions, the lock wears out quicker than the blade, and on the new versions, because the steel is harder than titanium, and then the new versions, the ceramic ball insert wears the blade out rather than the blade wears the lock out. Maybe you can see this on the inside of this Inkosi here. This one is well used and maybe a little bit too hard used through its lifetime. So you can see there is quite a bit material removed from the ceramic ball insert, but it's still not anywhere near that it's going to be a problem. So Chris Reeve knives age pretty well, I would say. So in the end, it doesn't matter. I would say the titanium The old ones, the 20 ones, are a tiny bit smoother, but they also get Lockstick a little bit quicker. Now, if you do have Lockstick on any of your Chris Reeve knives, I did a video how to fix Lockstick on a Chris Reeve. If you're interested, leave you the link in the description box. Next question, CPM S45VN or CPM S45VN? Now, again, doesn't matter. S45VN sharpens up quicker, S45VN chips a little bit quicker. All of my Chris Reeves are in S35VN, and I only have the Zahn in S45VN. I don't have a ton of experience with Chris Reeves S45VN, I gotta admit that, but I do have a lot of experience with Spyderco's S45VN, and I don't prefer that steel over S35VN, even though it has more edge retention. It's also less stable at the edge, and I don't like that. So yeah, there you go. But in the end, again, it's not that important. There are way more important things there. The CPM S45VN from Chris Reeve used to be 59 to 60 HRC, and the S45VN is 61 to 62 HRC. So there you go. Oh, also I wanted to mention that the edges out of the box in any Chris Reeve knife will not give you the performance that those knives are capable of, because usually, and I have most of these knives have been bought at a completely different time period, so I can say this with pretty big confidence that Chris Reeve is not the best at doing edges well, because they tend to over polish edges, which a lot of makers do that, and so therefore you will not get the performance out of the steel right away. So you have to resharpen your knife to get that performance. I recommend you diamond stones, and then give it a little bit of a polish, maybe with ceramic afterwards. That gives you the best results, in my opinion. Yeah, that's just my experience so far. Diamond stones really pop out that edge, both on S45VN and also on S45VN, much better. So next question is inlays or no inlays? Well, again, like with the small or large, you only have the choice between inlays or no inlays on the Inkosi and on the Sebenza. Now, I personally prefer the inlays on the new Sebenza 31 because I think it looks better and it also feels better in hand. And in general, I would always gravitate towards a Sebenza with inlays or any Chris Reeve with inlays because it just feels better in the hand. Now, if you like plain chain, there's also a benefit to that. The handles will just wear off a little bit quicker and get that used look, those snail trails a little bit quicker. I really like that look. I just don't like I just don't care for knives that have that look right out of the box. It's a little bit stupid in my opinion, but over the years, if the knife gets some character, I think it's really beautiful. That being said, even with the inlays, you still get those character snail trails all around the corners, and also the micarta wears quite a bit. It's a little bit more expensive with the micarta, actually quite a bit more expensive. I still would choose a micarta version over the plain chain version, but some people, everybody's different. You just have to see what you like more. I think, especially if you harder use your knives more, the micarta inlays feel much better in hand and in actual use. Now, next up, blade shapes. Now, you are going to have the option of having a drop point and Insingo, which is a sheep's foot, and a Tanto blade shape on the Inkosi and the Sebenza. On the Zahn, there is only a drop point, which is actually kind of a harpoon blade shape, and the Tanto. Now, I have met some people that carried their Zahn Tanto for a long time, and they really hard used it, and they really liked it. I'm personally not much of a Tanto guy myself, I have to admit. But if you like Tantos, then buy a Tanto. I personally don't like Tantos, so I don't buy Tantos that often. So, yeah. The harpoon blade shape, by the way, is plenty of hard use. You still get a relatively thick spine, 3.5 millimeters. That's 0.14, and even the tip is still pretty usable and pretty hard use. But still, you get a lot of piercing, you get a lot of belly, and I would prefer myself having a lot of belly over having that secondary point of a Tanto. So yeah, with the Zahn, I would definitely go with the drop point, and with all the others as well. But again, it depends what kind of blade shapes you usually carry. If you always carry sheep's foot blades, then you probably should go with the Insingo. if you always carry Tanto blades, then you should go with the Tanto. It's as simple as that. I personally prefer draw points most of the time, and I like those pointier points, and especially the Sebenza has that pointier, thinner tip. Not so the Inkosi here. The Inkosi is a little bit thicker, more stout in the tip, less precise also. And then the Umnumzaan has a blend of both. It's stout in the back and thin in the front, so I do like that quite a bit. Now, in terms of size, I'm gonna roll in quick size comparison for you guys. Basically, all of these knives are gonna be the same size in terms of blade length and overall length, almost the same size. So we're just gonna use the Sebenza here for reference.
Here we have a Cold Steel Code 4 and a Cold Steel Recon 1. Fuck yes. Bitches.
Now, that being said, I do not really understand all of these knives come in 3.6 inches and the blade length which is 9 centimeters. I wish Chris Reeve would make one of them at least 4 inches because, you know, think about it, every other company has a 3.5 inch blade and everybody also has a 4-inch blade, so I think it kind of would make more sense for Chris Reeve to make one of these at least a larger one, because they also have a smaller. Why not make also a larger? I don't know. It's a little bit confusing to me why all of these are the same size range, but that's it. That being said, despite they're all the same size range, there's quite a difference in weight here. The Umnumzaan comes in the 138 grams, which is 4.8 ounces, something like that. And then also the Inkosi, same weight, 140 grams, 4.9 ounces. And then the Sebenza large actually comes in at 133 grams, which is 4.7 ounces. Not too bad. Even with the inlays, you get relatively lightweight. I mean, 4.7 ounces with inlays, full titanium, no milling. That's pretty good. And it's the same size, basically. And then on a small Sebenza, you get 80 grams. Yeah, which is like 3 ounces. So pretty, obviously the small one is lighter and carries a little bit better therefore. But in terms of carryability from the others, as you can see, the Umnumzaan is slimmer in that dimension than the Inkosi, and it's wider than the Sebenza. So this one is the slimmest, the narrowest this way, and then the Umnumzaan and then Inkosi. And that's also the order I would rank these in terms of carryability. Those are really, really close, but I feel like the large Sebenza carries the best out of all of them. So yeah. In terms of blades, blade shapes and how they cut and everything. So the Inkosi is gonna be, like I said, or did I already said it? I don't know. 3.5 millimeters on the spine, 0.14. And then behind the edge thickness, I measured 0.45 millimeters to 0.37, so 18 to 14 thousandths. It's a little bit thicker up here. And the Inkosi is sort of a robust build. It has also a little bit of a less steeper hollow grind than the other two guys here. So yeah, the Inkosi really feels like a robust knife. Especially with those finger grooves, you get a good purchase, thick spine, thick tip, thicker grind. But I also have to say, you know, there's a trade-off, like with everything. You do not get as much cutting power with the Inkosi. Now, with the Umnumzaan, you get a good blend of both things. You get a 3.5 millimeter blade stock thickness, like with the Inkosi. And you get 0.4 millimeters to 0.37 millimeters, so 15 to 14 thousandths behind the edge. It's a little bit thinner behind the edge and also way thinner in grind. It has a much deeper grind, meaning once you resharpen this knife a couple more times, it's even thinner than before, which is one of the big benefits of a hollow grind. So the Umnumzan is a blend between stoutness and cutting power, especially with that belly that you don't get on the Inkosi nor on the Sebenza. That belly on the front really helps you doing a lot of work. And then the Sebenza has just a 3mm blade stock, which is even thinner. So that's what's 3mm, like 0.12 in inches. So, and then behind the edge 0.4 to 0.33, so 12 thousandths in the back and like 16 thousandths, yeah, 16 17 thousandths in the front. So and again, we have a really deep hollow grind. So the Umnumzan and the Sebenza have a much deeper hollow grind than the Inkosi, and because of its nature of the blade stock thickness and the blade grind, it's gonna slice a little bit better. The small Sebenza is a little bit thinner behind the edge, but has the same blade stock thickness. I would say between small and large, the large Sebenza cuts better because it has the wider blade. Therefore, you can get a little bit more use out of it. Also, you have more, edge length, so more cutting length. But so the Sebenza is basically the best slicer out of all of these. The Umnumzan is a good blend, like I said, between a hard use knife and the slicer. And I really like that belly. That's probably the best thing about the Umnumzan, is that belly shape that you don't get with the other two guys. So this one has a more precise tip, but the Umnumzan is a little bit more, it feels like it has a little bit more power in the cut because of that belly. So I would rank these in terms of cutting power. This one is better than this and then this. And maybe this one is, I don't know, kind of in between here or here. I don't know. So yeah, and those obviously the behind the edge thicknesses are just with my caliper, so those might vary from people to people. So the handle shapes. The handle shapes are very interesting. I think the Sebenza has the best ergonomic, the best ergos, and especially with the inlays, there is nothing that beats a Sebenza. And there are very few knives actually that I have that beat the Sebenza 31 with inlays. I just think it's really ergonomic. You have a raised front of the handle and a raised back, and in between it's kind of concave, and it really locks you in very nicely when you cut. Now the Inkosi is also pretty good ergonomically. You have those finger grooves. I personally have small hands, so finger grooves normally don't fit me that well. On this knife they do fit me. Also you have a raised spine, raised back, so again that concaveness locks you in pretty well. You kind of have to get used to that Chris Reeve handle blade shape. The Umnumzan is the one that you don't have to get used to that much because it's more traditional. Now, what the Umnumzan doesn't have though is that the corners of the handle are a little bit blocky, and with the Sebenza and the Inkosi you get like really well chamfered edges, so everything is nice and rounded off, whereas here they kind of cut the corners by not cutting the corners basically. And so this feels a little bit more blocky. A lot of people complain about that frame lock right here, which I still don't know if I like that sticking out here. I think it's a little bit of an ergonomic issue. It's not that big that some people say it is, but I feel the blockiness of the handle in total makes it not the most ergonomic Chris Reeve. So the other ones are more ergonomic in my opinion. Also the pocket clip that rests on the lock bar here on this knife is a little bit, you kind of feel that when you harder use this knife. Now, so in terms of ergonomics, Sebenza with inlays, then Sebenza with no inlays, then Inkosi, and then Umnumzan. Hardware and construction. Now, all of these knives are built pretty well. I have to give it to the Umnumzan though. The Umnumzan only relies on 2 screws to take it apart. I think it's the simplest knife of all of those to take apart. It just takes no time. It's pretty easy. No frills to it. It has the larger pivot, which the Sebenza doesn't have. And I found myself, and this is true for my old 21 as well, and there were many years between those two knives when I bought them, so I found out that those pivot screws kind of get loose a little bit easy, especially if you open and close the knife a lot. So you have to use Loctite on the Sebenza, which you don't have to use on the Inkosi. So in order of build construction, I kind of like it that way a little bit better. Now on the internals of those knives, the washers are also quite different to from all of these knives. The Inkosi has like these super large washers that don't rotate with the blade. They are always in the same position, and like all Chris Reeve washers, they have those cutouts for oil and grease to stay there and lubricate the knife over time, and also the dirt to not rub against the blade, but to get pushed into those pockets. So pretty cool. The Umnumzan has two smaller washers, and then the Sebenza has a smaller one and an even smaller one washer. So it has two different washers, two different sized washers. But I think in the end it doesn't really matter. All of those washers are pretty smooth. They work quite well. I do have to say though, the break-in period was very different on all of these knives. It could have been the time period that I bought them, but the Sebenzas definitely broke in the easiest. Both the 21 and the 31. And Inkosi took a little bit more time. I really didn't like this knife when I got it, but now as you can see, it's pretty damn smooth over the years. And the Umnumzan was the worst breaking in. It still has not broken in yet, but yeah, it's getting there. But don't expect the Chris Reeve to be perfectly fine out of box. You may have to play a little bit with it to get it there. So yeah, there is that. Now, I almost forgot when I talked about ergonomics, but the jimping on all of these knives is also very different. You have a very smooth jimping on the Umnumzan, a little bit more aggressive jimping on the Sebenza, and even more aggressive jimping on the Inkosi. I do like the Inkosi's jimping the least. I think it's a little bit too, I don't know, too aggressive. I like the one on the Sebenza. It feels natural. It feels simple. I think it works the best. And then the Umnumzan jimping is a little bit too smooth in my opinion. But all of these jimpings are fine in the end. I think neither of those knives will disappoint you in terms of how they feel. Now, what will disappoint you maybe is if you're not used to those thumb studs. The Chris Reeve thumb studs are a little bit annoying in my opinion. I think they're a little bit too sharp, and especially on the Inkosi, you don't have that much room between your thumb and the thumb stud to get your thumb in there because you can't press directly on there. It's a little bit too sharp. So yeah, I like that a little bit better on the Sebenza, where you have a little, ever so slightly more space to get your thumb in here. For whatever reason, the Sebenza feels so much better in terms of the thumb studs. And then the Umnumzan is also pretty good because it has like normal thumb studs. So those pyramid thumb studs, I am not a big fan of it, to be honest. Yeah, that's that. Pocket clips is fine on all of those. I do prefer the pocket clip on the 31 Sebenza and on the Inkosi. On the Umnumzan and the 21 Sebenza, you have the pocket clip resting on the lock bar, which is not an issue, but like I said before, ergonomically, sometimes if you're cutting harder material and you're doing that for longer periods of time, it gets a little bit of an issue. All of those knives are fine in pocket. The Umnumzan sticks out the most, and you get a little bit more room to grab the knife here. If you do remove the lanyard tube here, you get quite a bit of space to put your own lanyard in here. So the Umnumzan is probably the best for people that like their own lanyards. And yeah, if you do remove the lanyard that comes on all of these out of the box, make sure to disassemble the entire knife and put out this tube, because otherwise it will rattle around. On the Inkosi, the lanyard placement is not pretty good because they don't have a dedicated lanyard tube. They just wrap the lanyard around the back spacer, which this barrel spacer right here looks pretty beautiful, but the problem is that the blade basically cuts into your lanyard. Yeah, and also at the same time, the way the lanyard is placed, it always presses into your palm, so it's pretty uncomfortable. So if you're a lanyard person, you will probably not like the Inkosi. Alright people, in order to wrap this up, you guys would probably like me to rank those knives, and I can definitely do that. Pretty confident in telling you what is my favorite. Obviously everybody's gonna be different, everybody has different taste, and my taste in knives changes and has changed over the time. So I did like a different knife in the beginning than I do now. So, but basically, I will rank those knives in order from my least favorite to my most favorite. And yeah, I will eliminate the small Sebenza because I personally, like I said, I'm not a small knife guy. But if you do like small knives, the Sebenza small is a pretty cool knife. Would always choose this one over the small Inkosi. I think it's just a much better knife in total. But yeah, if you like the small Inkosi, don't be triggered. Everybody has different tastes. So between those three knives right here, which one is the best in my opinion? Now, I think my least favorite of those is definitely the Inkosi. The Inkosi has a thicker spine and a thicker grind. It has not the cutting power that both of these knives have. So for me, it doesn't make sense because, if you want a hard use knife, the Umnumzan is pretty cool. If you want a slicey knife, the Sebenza is pretty cool. So this knife kind of falls short in both those categories, basically, for me. I wish they would make this in a larger version, so there would be a little bit more added to the discussion, something that would make it even more different to the other ones. That being said, the Inkosi is a great knife. I've got lots of years of use out of this. I love how the way it looks now. It's pretty beat up, and it's a pretty solid knife in the end. It was reliable. The only thing that I don't really like, besides that it doesn't cut as well as the other ones, is that the access to the thumb studs is not that great. And those thumb studs, especially in a stressful situation where you need your knife quickly, you kind of tend to slip and press directly onto those thumb studs. Pretty uncomfortable. I don't like that too much. So I don't know, those Chris Reeves thumb stud were never my favorite. That being said, this is the only knife that I can open up reliably from the other side. I cannot do this on the Sebenza because it only has the thumb stud on one side unless you change them out basically. And on the Umnumzan, it's also pretty difficult for me, at least. Maybe this knife needs to be broken in more, but yeah, the Inkosi has that going for it. So the Inkosi is my least favorite, though, for the reasons I just mentioned. And then my second favorite, or least favorite, however you may put it, definitely the Umnumzan. The Chris Reeve Umnumzan is a pretty cool knife, I have to say. I really like that blade shape and that cutting power that comes with that belly. It's even more powerful in terms of its cutting than a Sebenza, I think, but it's not as slicey, if you know what I mean. But it's, in terms of a hard user, Umnumzan is pretty cool. The only thing I don't like about the Umnumzan, the blocky scales are not as comfortable as on the other two knives, and this harpoon's wedge up here is also not my favorite. It's a little bit sharp. Maybe you can see this by the reflection of the light, that this harpoon is actually almost comes to an edge. And I don't like this because I do press up on the blade up here, because you can still use the back section here. But I don't like this because this sharp corner right here, if the knife is closed, still stands proud, which I don't like that much. That being said, the Umnumzan is pretty cool. I think the build quality is better on the Sebenza than on the Inkosi in total. I don't know, for some reason the Umnumzan doesn't feel as well built. And also in terms of the smoothness, how it opens, how it closes, also have to give it to the Umnumzan, to the Inkosi and the Sebenza. But the Umnumzan is a pretty cool knife. It's also a little bit less expensive, like I said, probably because there is like less work done into the handle. But yeah, the blade shape is super cool. Probably my favorite blade shape out of all of these. I think it's just super functional. Yeah, the Umnumzan also has this over travel stop pin, which is not a deal breaker for me, honestly. But this knife is pretty solid, glass break on the end. I've seen a video that it actually does work, so that's pretty cool, even though it's just hardened steel and not anything else. But yeah, Umnumzan is a really powerful work knife, and it has that feeling of simplicity, like I mentioned earlier with the construction. It feels simple. It feels a little bit, I don't know, it feels just like a basic knife, and I do like that about it. It's a little bit heavier than my favorite one, which is definitely Sebenza 31. Like I said, I prefer the 31 for the inlays, not for the ceramic ball insert. And this just is the perfect knife for me. It feels really good ergonomically. it's pretty slicey because it's thinner, and it has this pointier tip. Yeah, the drop point just speak to me in general. If I wouldn't get it in a drop point, I would probably get it in Insingo, because the Insingo is also pretty cool, but I'm just more of a drop point kind of guy, and I do like that knife. It feels so smooth, and there is something about the Sebenza that it's a little bit different with the other two. I have more of a connection to this knife. Since I got this knife and I got it in hand, it just, I don't know, I felt that connection, and I felt like this is a knife that I'm gonna carry for a really, really long time, and gonna beat on it, gonna hard use it, and see it ages with me. And yeah, that's just a beautiful thing. So I have that connection with the Sebenza for some reason. I think it's a beautiful knife. It's so well constructed, it's so well done, and there are a few negative things about the Sebenza to be said. The only negative thing that I could find really is that the pivot gets loose a little bit quickly, and you have to use Loctite, but with Loctite it's really not an issue. Apart from that, such a great knife. I don't even mind the pointy thumb studs on this one as on the Inkosi here. I don't know whatever it is. Maybe there's just a little more space to get my thumb in here, but this knife feels super natural for me to open and close and to actually use. So yeah, there you go. This is my most favorite Chris Reeve knife. Everybody's different. Like I said, everybody has different taste in knives. I hope you liked this video. I hope you found it really helpful. And yeah, maybe we see each other in another video. Goodbye, people.